Every old bridge has a story, and some of them have a body. Across the world, from Japanese rivers to Albanian hilltops, builders shared one terrible belief, that stone alone was not enough, and that something living had to be sealed inside the foundations to hold them up. Tonight, 6 stories about the people who were walled in and what they became afterward. We begin in Japan, in the city of Matsue, where a great wooden bridge once refused to exist. Every time the workmen drove the central pillars into the riverbed, the current tore them loose. The mud swallowed timber, men drowned. Finally, the elders agreed on the old remedy, the one nobody said aloud, a hitobashira, a human pillar, a living person buried beneath the foundation whose spirit would hold the bridge against the water forever. But choosing a victim invites revenge, so they chose by omen instead. The first man to cross the site wearing a hakama with no seams in the sides would be the one. That man was Gensuke. He was ordinary. He had done nothing. They took him, lowered him into the pit beneath the middle pillar, and packed the earth over him while he was still breathing. The bridge stood for 300 years. The central pillar was called Gensuke's pillar, and boatmen said the water there ran strangely dark and no one fished beside it. From a Japanese river we traveled to a Greek gorge, where the same bargain was struck with a different currency. In the mountains of Epirus, a master builder spent years trying to bridge the river Arachthos at Arta. Every day his 45 craftsmen raised the arch. Every night the river pulled it down. Then a bird landed on the scaffolding and spoke with a human voice, and it told him the arch would never hold unless he buried his own wife in the foundation. He sent for her. He told her he had dropped his wedding ring into the stonework and begged her to climb down and find it. When she was deep in the pit, the men began to pour. She understood at once. She cursed the bridge and the mountains and everyone who would ever cross it, and the stones shuddered under the weight of her words. Then she remembered that her sisters traveled that road. So she changed her curse mid-breath, asking instead that the bridge tremble like a wild stem and that travelers pass in fear but pass safely. The bridge is still there. Locals will tell you that on certain nights the arch hums. Her mercy was one of the few in this tradition. In Albania, the sacrifice negotiated something stranger. Above the city of Shkodra stands Rozafa Castle, named for a woman. 3 brothers labored there to raise its walls, and every morning found their work in ruins. A white-haired stranger told them the ground demanded a life, and that they must wall in whichever of their 3 wives brought their lunch the next day. The brothers swore to say nothing at home. 2 of them broke the oath and warned their wives. Only the youngest kept his word, and so it was his wife, Rozafa, who came up the hill with bread, carrying her infant son. When they told her, she did not run. She asked for terms. "Leave my right eye unwalled," she said, "so I can watch him. My right hand, so I can stroke his hair. My right foot, so I can rock his cradle. And leave my right breast free so I can feed him." They built her into the wall exactly as she asked. Visitors still point to a stone that weeps a pale mineral trickle and call it milk. Not every child chosen for the foundations went quietly. In Wales, one of them talked his way out. The warlord Vortigern, hunted and desperate, tried to build a fortress on a rocky hill in Snowdonia. The walls collapsed every night. His advisors, reading the omens, told him the mortar had to be mixed with the blood of a boy born without a father. Soldiers scoured the country and found a strange child in Carmarthen whose mother could name no man. They brought him to the hill to be killed. The boy asked one question. Had the wise men bothered to ask what was under the hill? "Dig," he said. They dug and found a hidden pool. "Drain it," he said. They drained it, and from the bed of it rose 2 dragons, one white and one red, which fell on each other and tore the earth as they fought. The walls, the boy said, had never wanted blood. They had been shaken from below. He was spared. The fortress on that hill is called Dinas Emrys, and the boy is remembered as Merlin. That is a foundation legend where the victim escapes. In Burma, the arithmetic ran the other way, and on a scale that is hard to look at. When King Mindon founded Mandalay in the 1850s, the city was laid out as a sacred diagram, a perfect square with the palace at its heart. Sacred cities need guardians, and Burmese tradition held that the strongest guardian spirits, the Myosad, were made from people buried alive beneath the gates and corners of the walls. Court chronicles and travelers' accounts describe victims interred at the 52 points of the enclosure, sealed in great earthen jars or under the gate posts, chosen for their strength or their beauty or their bad luck. Among them, the stories insist, was a pregnant woman placed at the most important corner because a spirit carrying an unborn child would be twice as fierce. Decades later, British soldiers garrisoned in that palace complained of the same thing again and again. Figures standing at the gates at night that did not answer challenges and did not leave footprints, and were still there when the lamps were brought. Europe's version of that fierceness was quieter and somehow worse. In Denmark, the folklore is unusually specific. To keep a rampart or a church from settling, you immured something living, and the belief was so ordinary that people distinguished between grades of victim. A living horse under a churchyard produced a kirkgrim, a hoofed thing that stalked the aisles. A pig produced something else. But for the walls of Copenhagen, the story says, they used a girl. She was young and innocent, and in most tellings, simple enough not to understand what was happening. They sat her at a table inside a vault in the earthwork, gave her bread and sweets and a candle, and let her eat while 11 masons bricked up the entrance behind her. When the last stone went in, the wall held. For generations afterward, people walking the ramparts at night reported the same thing from beneath their feet. Not screaming, not moaning, just the small, distracted sound of a child humming to herself in the dark. 6 stories, 6 countries, one idea that keeps returning like water finding a crack. Something about permanence frightened our ancestors. They looked at a bridge that kept falling, a wall that kept sinking, and they could not accept that the answer was bad soil or a fast current. They believed the ground had an appetite, and that appetite was met by taking someone who had not agreed to be taken. Notice who was chosen. A passerby in unlucky trousers, a wife told to fetch a ring, a woman carrying lunch, a child with no father, a pregnant stranger, a girl too trusting to run, never the elders who decided, never the builder himself. These legends survive not because we believe them, but because they preserve a very old confession, that the impressive things we walk across were often paid for by someone whose name we barely kept. And that is why the stories always end with a sound. Water running dark, stone weeping, an arch humming, a child singing under the road. The buried victim never gets justice. She only gets to be heard.